they use to get us in these, that we've consented to something. You see what I'm saying? And so we need to just start thinking about all of these things and start rethinking how we're doing things, you know? That's all. It's not terribly complicated, but it's just putting some thought into things that we've taken for granted, you know? I mean, in the government's educational system, they've taught us certain things, and we have to unlearn some of that stuff. You know, at law, I do things at law. In other words, if you read my notice and demand on the oath of office document, it's an at law, for the record, at law notice, oath of office document, right? And because in law is a contract, at law is not. Okay, mother-in-law is a mother because of a marriage, a contract. If you're in law, there's a contract involved. New York City. City of New York, okay, is a good example. I mean, everybody knows about New York City. Well, New York City is the de jure entity, okay, the sovereign entity. City of New York's the corporation that does business over there, okay? Same thing here. Weatherford is the sovereign city or town, okay? City of Weatherford or town of Weatherford, whatever it is, it's probably city, is the corporation that's doing business here. And you have to understand what it is. When you follow the rules of proper English, by putting City of New York, okay, that's creating a fiction. Is your house in a corporation? I've seen people take those Greek numbers off their house and spell those numbers out, you know. In other words, ONE, TWO, 1, 2, 3, you know, instead of the Greek, it's not Greek numbers, they're Arabic numbers. But even the Supreme Court, it used to be the U.S. Supreme Court address was one was spelt out. And I know First Street is spelt out. And even today, they've changed it to this now, and you'll see on the next page. On the land patents, okay, all the Arabic numbers, if you look on those land patents, all the Arabic numbers are spelled out. There's no Arabic numbers except for the land patent number. The land patent number is an Arabic number. But the legal descriptions numbers are all spelled out. And here's the Supreme Court address in Washington, D.C., and this is a recent one. Anytime you get a letter from the government or any corporation, it's an offer of contract. All you have to do is reject their offer of contract. If they send you a letter saying, your grass is too long, and if you don't cut your grass, then we're going to fine you $200, that's an offer of contract. So you just reject it, you know, and I'll show you here right now. Is the letter sent to you? Is the next question. Okay, because it's always sent to all block capital letters. So then maybe you want to reevaluate whether you want to open the thing. Okay? Refuse for fraud. No such person at this address. You see what I'm saying? I don't open it, and I write on it, refuse for fraud. This is how you reject it. I, by affidavit, declared living American sovereigns having a treaty law of God to accept your offer for value, and for the following reasons I'm returning your offer rejected for discharge and closure. You brought United States corporate law with color outside your jurisdiction without an international treaty with my republic state, as you have no jurisdiction on the land of Texas. And as soon as he's done taking his picture, then I'll move on to the next page. Anyway, so you basically write that in 45 degrees in red ink. In red ink across it, and then I would make a copy. Here's the next page. You have falsely accused me of being a citizen of the United States. You're trespassing and criminally attempting to convert corporate statutes with color into lawful criminal codes without chartered, regulatory, and delegated jurisdictional authority. You're not registered or chartered for conducting business in Texas by my republic state. So you start, these are all points, reasons why they don't have any authority. You see what I'm saying?
But you're not writing all this on the envelope.
No, that's on the letter. If you open it up and on the letter itself. If you open it up. If you don't open it up, then you just refuse for fraud, no such person at this address, and send it back to them. See what I'm saying? And so anyways, you put all that on there, and you know, then what you do is, this is what I did in Alberta, okay, and what happened, I filed that lawsuit and they charged me, I think it was $2,500 in court costs, and I just rejected their offer of contract. and I haven't heard a peep out of them, eh? And they wanted, I think it was $2,500 in court costs, eh? And I filed that lawsuit. It's all a big charade anyways. They're a bunch of thieves. And so I rejected their offer of contract and haven't heard a peep out of them. And
so you make that into a stamp. That's a big old stamp that you...
Actually, no, I printed it. It's Microsoft Publisher. We'll turn that around so you can print it at a 45-degree angle. And then I ran it through my computer, through my printer, and printed that on there in red ink.
Oh, okay.
That's a very good idea.
Yeah. So I can send you the file if you want. Send me an email, I'll send you the file. If you get an offer of contract for a corporation, I send them an invoice, and I probably never, and 9 times out of 10, I never hear from them again, because these corporations are clearly involved in commerce. If I get an offer from a government, I send them a notice demand with an invoice and see what happens. Sometimes they go away, and sometimes they don't. Do you want to go into their courts? No. Their courts have the appearance of justice. Color of law is the appearance or semblance without the substance of legal right. So there's no justice in their courts. That's the reason we need to get our de jure courts running. So what happens when their judge rules against you and says you're a person's? Do you have to do what he says? What's going on? Has anybody got any thoughts?
You're not a person. You just tell them I'm not a person. I don't fall under that.
A lot of people let judges go ahead and ignore everything they say and just railroad them. I won't say a lot of people let them do it. They just go ahead and do it, whether they let them or not. Okay? And so that's what we're going to cover now. The claim and exercise of a constitutional right cannot be converted into a crime. There can be no sanction or penalty imposed upon one because of his exercise of constitutional rights. No state shall convert a liberty into a privilege, license it, and charge a fee therefor. If a state converts a right or liberty into a privilege, the citizen can ignore the license and the fee and engage in the right or liberty with impunity. It's an offer of contract. Reject their offer of contract and file a criminal complaint. An officer who acts in violation of the Constitution ceases to represent the government. Did you know that? Okay, so you're a judge. You're not representing the government. You're perjuring your oath of office right now. You're not representing the government. You're now personally liable. Ignorance of the law does not excuse misconduct in anyone, least of all a sworn officer of the law. And as in the case of illegal arrest, the officer is bound to know these fundamental principles and privileges and must keep within the law at his peril. Failure to obey the command of a police officer constitutes a traditional form of breach of peace. Obviously, however, one cannot be punished for failing to obey the command of an officer if the command itself is violative of the Constitution. The courts have decreed that want of jurisdiction makes all acts of judges, magistrates, U.S. Marshals, sheriffs, local police, all void. Not just voidable, void. One apparent avoidable judgment is one apparently valid, but in truth wanting in some material respect. Where there is no jurisdiction, there is no judge. The proceeding is as nothing. Such has been the law from the days of Malchet, and that's 10 Coke 68. Remember Lord Coke, 1500s? And that's in a U.S. court case, actually U.S. Supreme Court case. 13 Wall 335, that's U.S. Supreme Court. A void judgment is one which from its inception was a complete nullity and without legal effect. A void judgment is one which has no legal force or effect whatever. It is an absolute nullity. Its invalidity may be asserted by any person whose rights are affected at any time and at any place. And it need not be attacked directly, but may be attacked collaterally whenever and wherever it is interposed. A void judgment, insofar it purports to be pronouncement of a court, is an absolute nullity. A void order may be attacked either directly or collaterally at any time. A void judgment is one which from its inception and forever continues to be absolutely null, without legal efficacy, ineffectual to bind the parties or to support a right, of no legal force and effect whatever, and incapable of enforcement in any matter or to any degree. A judge loses his absolute immunity from damage action only when acts in clear absence of all jurisdiction or performance of an act which is not judicial in nature. When enforcing mere statutes, judges of all courts do not act judicially, and thus are not protected by qualified or limited immunity, but merely act as an extension, as an agent of the involved agency, but only in a ministerial and not a discretionary capacity. Immunity for judges does not extend to acts which are clearly outside their jurisdiction. You start putting this stuff in any paperwork that you're serving on them, and I guarantee you're putting them on notice. You're putting them on notice that I'm coming after you personally. Where any state proceeds against a private individual in a judicial form, it is well settled that the state, county, municipality, etc. waives any immunity to counters, cross-claims, complaints by direct or collateral means regarding the matters involved. Now, if you understand what a collateral attack is, okay, with a direct attack, when you lose a case, then in their rules, you have a certain period of time that you can file an appeal, right? And that's a direct attack, okay, when you file the appeal and you go through the appeal process. A collateral attack is when you come in 6 months later and you file a lawsuit against them for perjury of oath and all the rest of it. That's a collateral attack because you're coming in from the side. You're coming in from some other direction. You see what I'm saying? And that's a collateral attack is what that is. And so you don't have to appeal it. You can attack it collaterally, or you can do it any way you want. It's an absolute nullity. The government is but an agency to the state being the sovereign people. The rights of sovereignty extend to all persons and things not privileged that are within the territory. They extend to all strangers. Remember that word, strangers? Okay? This is U.S. Supreme Court. They extend to all strangers resident therein, not only to those who are naturalized and to those who are domiciled therein, having taken up their abode with the intention of permanent residence, but also to those whose residence is transitory. All strangers are under the protection of the sovereign while they are within his territory and owe a temporary allegiance in return for that protection. U.S. Supreme Court. Okay, they're talking about strangers there. We're talking two classes of citizens. That's exactly what that is. They conferred as against the government the right to be left alone, the most comprehensive of rights and the right most valued by civilized men. And that's U.S. Supreme Court again. In the meantime, the civil law, it was the form of law imposed by the Roman Empire, which was largely, if not wholly, governed by martial law rule. Equity has always been understood to follow the law. To have superior equity is to turn things on their head. This is exactly what happens when martial law is imposed. If equity is the law, then it follows its own course rather than following the common law, thereby destroying the common law and leaving what's called equity in its place. And you can still have access to common law, but you can't expect it to be through equity. Okay? If you appeal to their discretion, then you're appealing to their equity, and they may rule in your favor, but I wouldn't count on it. And they're just a bunch of thieves. And so you have to hold them to common law. You have to take away their discretion, and that's the only way you can do it. And really, the real solution is to convene our own juries and common law juries and start putting them on trial ourselves. And I guarantee you that will get their attention big time. Whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object evinces a design to reduce them under utter despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such a government. It is not the function of our government to keep the citizen from falling into error. It is the function of the citizen to keep the government from falling into error. At a minimum, we should administrate everybody who potentially could involved with you or your straw man, including chiefs of police, attorney general, who's the highest law enforcement officer, chief judges, presiding judges, prosecutors, commissioners, federal officials, IRS commissioners, etc., state officials, and deputy attorney generals. If you're getting anything from government offices, find out who's in charge and administrate them. You know, I don't care if it's Child Protective Services. I don't care who it is. They all have a boss. There's somebody up there that has an oath of office, and that's who you go for. If you're going to have even the smallest hint that something's going on involving you or your straw man, administrate them. Start building a case against them. I have been experimenting with a different format. I don't even like that. I should take that out because I don't do the agreement. I have found, I quit doing that. I have found that, when the code enforcers stop you, I cannot be there. You have to be able to articulate your position. Do not show them government-issued ID unless you have to. We all have to pick our battles. We all have to know how far we're